speaker. So I'd like to introduce to you Nicole Merrill, who is from Boring AI, and I'm particularly looking forward to this one. I think this is going to be a great whistle-stop tour of some of the things we can be thinking about in terms of LLMs and how that relates to conversational design and the kind of skills set that we have and how that evolves. Okay, I'll hand you over.
Yes, thank you. I'll start a timer too. All right, everybody. Hello. My slides are a little off because they're not slides. It's now a PDF, so we're going to see how this works. My name is Nicole Merrill, and I am going to be talking about navigating uncertainty today. If you are a conversation designer, it has probably been a pretty wild year for you. And so I'm thrilled to be I'm really excited to talk about this from a conversation design perspective. And side note, every time I say I'm really excited, I'm reminded of a time 8 years ago I was giving a presentation to an international audience, and afterwards someone came up to me and said, you know, you are American, and all you Americans are always talking about how excited you are before a presentation. I was like, really? No way. And then I started listening to Americans, and I was like, yeah, we always say we're excited. But I truly am, because I've been 6 years as a conversation designer. I have spent the better part of over a year now in generative AI, working on conversational products and non-conversational generative AI products. That's a mouthful. And it has been chaotic, it has been wild, but I have learned a lot. And so today I'm going to be sharing those learnings with you. Professionally, I am a principal conversation designer at a fintech large enterprise, and I also run Boring AI, which is an AI literacy education company specializing in teaching non-technical teams about how to think about and use AI in the workplace. So I think about AI all the time. I want to start by taking us back in time to that moment when we first saw ChatGPT. Because when I first saw ChatGPT, well, this is going to be weird. Let's do it. Yeah. I went, oh, wow, that's impressive. Anyone else have that feeling? Okay, I see some nods, yes. Yeah, it was really exciting. I was like, okay, here's a bot that can understand me. It knows my intents. It can identify multiple intents. It can switch conversational topics. It can create anything I want. You wanted to talk like a pirate, make a poem? Great. I was thrilled to see this. So my first thought was, oh, wow. My second thought was, oh, shit. There goes my job. That was a really real feeling. Anyone else have a bit of those nerves around ChatGPT? Thank you for your honesty. I want to say we're not alone. So at that moment I said, okay, well, here's a bot that identifies intents, multiple intents, predicts the conversation flow, holds context, and writes the responses, which is like 70% of my job at the time. And so I sat with those feelings, and I started listening to other people who were starting to have the same kind of fears, and I started seeing headlines like this. And I noticed other people were also quite worried. So we are not alone. And as I was looking at these headlines, I noticed, hey, you know, these look really familiar. Seems like we've been here before. If you'll notice on here, the date's kind of hard to see. These are headlines from 2016 about robots coming to take your job. And that's because in 2016, the World Economic Forum released a report called The Fourth Industrial Revolution, where it talked about how AI and automation is going to take millions of jobs by 2020. Did that happen? I don't know. But we've been through this before. And so it got me thinking about this whole, is my job going to be replaced? Is it not? About how being a futurist is really easy. There's no accountability. You can say whatever you want. People aren't going to come back and be like, you were wrong, right? So that's why we see a lot of people saying, you know what? There's not going to be conversation design anymore. It makes for good clickbait, right? We see it in other industries too. The CEO of NVIDIA just said, we're not going to need software developers anymore, right? We heard it in the learning and development session as well about, you know, LLMs are changing learning and development. Maybe we don't need people to teach anymore. This is flawed. But talking about what we're going to do is so much harder, right? What do we do in ambiguity? How do we navigate ambiguity, right, as people who are in this profession? So that's what we're going to be talking about right now. Because this framing, conversation design is dead, conversation design is unnecessary now. Conversation design is going to be replaced by LLMs. Anyone heard those before? Yeah, me too. It's unhelpful, right? Because what that does is it creates a binary. Conversation design is dead. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. And it gets us just on the defensive, right? It doesn't help us progress. It doesn't help us ask the right questions about how to evolve. And so really what we're doing here today is we're reframing the narrative, right? Conversation design is evolving. And what I love about that is when we talk about it in that framework, what we're really able to do is ask better questions. Because if I say conversation design is evolving, now we've got something to work with. We can ask things like, why is it evolving? How is it evolving? How should I adapt? Right? These are much better questions to help you in your conversation design journey figure out where you're going. So let's dive into those. Why is it evolving? Well, it's pretty simple to say, ChatGPT, right? We know that. But going deeper here, it's evolving because more companies are experimenting with generative AI and chatbots. I am thrilled with the amount of companies that are now suddenly interested in conversational AI. It's so exciting to see that they've taken an interest into a space that before ChatGPT, nobody knew what I did. They were like, chatbots, okay, I think I've heard of those before, right? It's evolving because LLMs, large language models, offer new capabilities that change the conversational experiences. A lot of us have worked on bots where it's FAQ bots, right? They ask a question, we give an answer. Now we're seeing bots that are things like character AI. These are friendly character bots that we can play with. You've got bots like Pi, built by Inflection AI, easily my favorite bot, right? More of a brainstorming tool, a thought partner. Right? So we have these really cool experiences that LLMs are offering. More people outside of conversational AI are building conversations. I think this is one of the most interesting pieces here. We used to kind of be the people that owned it, right? You had to come to us for our special knowledge. A lot of people now are starting to build. And that creates opportunities to really partner with them and really help teach them as well. But it also changes conversational AI and conversation design. And then LLMs are already pre-trained and can be used with and in place of NLU. Now I'm not going to dive into kind of that conversation as a whole other session, but that's attractive, right? That's attractive. You can create a prototype of an LLM chatbot in 5 minutes. Previously with NLU, you could not do that. So how's conversation design, the field, actually changing? Well, what we're talking about now is conversation designers are expected to experiment with LLMs. And when we talk about experimentation, we're talking about prompting, but we're also talking about learning how these models work, learn the opportunities and the limitations. Because despite the hype, this is not a silver bullet. There are new challenges that you have to design for and work with when you are working with LLMs, okay? Collaboration with engineering and data science is key. So before generative AI came out, I was what's known as a full stack conversation designer, which means I built, I tested, I designed, all of those. Now it's engineering that's building. And it's great to have an engineer to do this, but you need an engineer. And so they become your partners and you work hand in hand together. So for some of you, that might be a bit of a change where, for some of you, it's like you design it and then you hand off and maybe you come back for testing. In this case, you're co-creating together. Side note for any PMs or leaders out there, you're co-creating together. So bring your designers into the fold when you're working with engineers and data scientists. Designing with LLMs requires a shift in your design skills and adding technical skills. We saw from Micah's presentation this morning about retrieval augmented generation. You don't necessarily have to do that, but you have to understand it. You have to understand how that impacts your design. Right? Same with fine-tuning. You have to understand those things. New generative AI products are creating opportunities to design for new use cases. I think this is one of the most interesting ones too. I touched on it earlier, but one of the things we're seeing is chatbots are being taken out of the box and put in directly into the product. That changes the experience. Or maybe you have a chatbot that generates something. It generates a PowerPoint. It generates a summary of a PDF that someone uploads. Right? These are new experiences, new products, and that creates new opportunities for design. So let's talk about where does that leave us? What are we doing? Well, if you look at conversational AI function, what I love about this group, conversation design and designers in general, is that we really are a cross-functional function. We work across these 3 functions: business, design, technology. Now, maybe some of you might be in 2 or you might be in 1, but you have a lot of knowledge of the business and the technical side. You may be writing flows and responses, but you understand interaction design. You understand how to design for unhappy paths, not just the happy path. And that is powerful because engineering and data scientists who are coming into this, who can build these models, don't always have that knowledge. So you can offer that knowledge as well. You also see, in this case, before I worked on generative AI, I was more in the business design space. I'm really good at taking big business problems and mapping them to conversational solutions. Technology, I knew some about NLU. I did a bit of training, but it wasn't necessarily my strong suit. The future of conversation design is in the middle. We are looking at sitting across all of these functions, being able to look at what the business value is, what the business problem is, translate that into design, be able to communicate what your users need, who they are, define the business problem, scope the model. When I talk about scope, defining what the model can and cannot do. That could be prompting, or it could also be running a design facilitation exercise where you get everybody aligned and we find out what should this bot do. How are the customers expected to interact with us, right? And then it's going deeper on the technology. Prompting is kind of your entryway, but then go further. Learn about the differences between the models. And what starts to happen, I got ahead of myself. This is the future. I got ahead. So we ask, how should I adapt? One, we're gonna get curious. You're already here online, you're doing great. You're gonna review your skills, which we'll do in just a second here. We'll identify your opportunities to build new skills, and then we'll make a learning plan. So don't freak out. This is a bunch of skills. I looked at, as you work across business, design, and technology, all the skills you are using as a conversation designer. Okay? We do not have time to go in depth into this right now. You can corner me later and I will talk all about this. Okay? But there's one skill as a conversation designer that stands out above all, and that's AI interaction design. That is what you do. You do AI interaction design with a specialty in language models. Notice I didn't say large language models. Language models, whether it's NLU or LLMs or small language models, which are coming into play. Then you have some of the deeper design skills here, AI systems design, right? When you're building LLM bots, you have to look at the whole experience. How does it fit together? The data pieces, the model pieces, the architecture. Because how engineering builds the back end is going to affect your experience. And I tell you what, there's no one way to do it. Everybody is experimenting, which is kind of terrifying and also really useful, right? Then you got to go deep into the technology. I talked about prompting, but understanding LLM and NLU hybrids, right? Big topic right there. Understanding RAG and fine-tuning, understanding your model choice, the data set curation piece, essential, because the data that these models are trained on impacts your design. It impacts what your model's going to say. It impacts how your user is going to experience this chatbot. So diving into these spaces. Now, you do not have to do all of this at once. In fact, you could just pick a couple of these things and work on them over the next 6 months, right? But it's really looking at how is conversation design changing from what I do now. And you're all in different places, right? So pick the things that interest you, pick the things that build on your skill set, and then pick the thing that you're like, I'm not as strong in this area. That's how you go forward. And then you create a learning plan. Now, we all have different options for learning. It's actually never been a better time to learn, quite honestly, right? We've got conferences, we've got online courses, we've got communities. So I simplified this into really 4 categories, how you approach this. One, you think about who can help you. Who do you know that might be able to teach you something? Who's really good at this kind of stuff? Right? This could be in your organization, could be in your community, and so on. How can you get on a project that builds those skills? Getting hands-on is key, right? Being able to build, being able to test, being able to put it in front of users and say, what do you think of this? And learn, because with LLMs, when you're working with the large language models, your outputs are not predictable, so you oftentimes don't know what it's gonna say, okay? And so understanding what it's going to do, right? What your users are going to do with it, because you have to scope your bot and say, this is what a user should do, this is not what they should do. That iterative process is important, and so getting hands-on builds that skill. Then how will you show your new skills? I think this is actually critical, because if you are in an organization, it is likely they don't know what you do. Has anyone had that happen before? I saw some heads. Yeah, they don't know what you do, right? So it's up to you to then show those skills. And it happens on oftentimes one-on-one conversations. Get in there, you see a project, and you're like, I could make that better. right? There's an approach to doing it, right, in the way that works for you. But being able to say, hey, you know what? I think your bot could use some user testing. Hey, you know what? I think if you tweaked your prompt like this, we could get a better output, right? Being able to offer your insights as a conversation designer and AI interaction designer is key. What other learning do you need to support your evolution? This could be anything from courses, conferences, obviously, identifying what it is you need that will get you the skill that you've identified, right? Pretty simple on that one. For me, this is what it looked like. It might look different for you. Engineers who can teach. Oh, I love engineers who can teach, right? I have learned so much from engineers this year because they've taught me how they're building the systems. And I need to know that in order to design the experience. Curious PMs, product managers, if you're inside of an organization, product managers who are curious about how to build these things, they need some help. They're kind of responsible for it all. So going in there and saying like, how can I help? Can we talk about this? Tell me about what you're building. I'm learning too. I started out this journey by I'm fortunate to be in a large organization, and I started DMing everyone on Slack and said, what are you working on? What are you doing, right? Could work for you. It could be you DM people on LinkedIn. What are you working on? What do you do? What have you learned? That's another powerful question. I make my own bots using custom GPTs. And then how do you share your new skills? For me, it was teaching. You could do this on a group. You could do this on a one-on-one. Hey, I learned something. Can I show you this? Really powerful tool. And I think more than anything, being okay with not knowing everything. We are in a flood, a fire hose of information right now. You cannot possibly know everything. The people we're working with do not know everything. So being okay with that and being able to say, you know, that's not something I know. I'm learning right now. And then identifying what other learning you need. I would say on this case, for me, it was video explainers on YouTube. I needed to know, what are we talking about? What do you mean a RAG solution? What does this mean, right? Honestly, I would take engineering documents and put them in ChatGPT version and have them explain it to me like I was 5. And it worked. I learned about engineering that way as well. And data science. I ended up doing, at the same time, a data science certification right at the same time we started working with LLMs. That helped as well. I'm not training the models, but it helped me understand the behavior a little bit better and how data scientists build. Because they're good at what they do. Engineering is good at what they do. And you need to come in with your skills and build together. It is a co-creation process because you are the ones that understand the users. You know what they're doing. You know how they're going to interact. And engineering and data science isn't necessarily thinking about that. They're getting it to work. They're building the systems that are going to work, right? So they need you in there. It's a co-creation process. So to review, you're curious, you're already here. We get curious, you're already here. Review your skills. What are you working on? Where are your skills at? Identify the opportunities to build new skills, and then make a learning plan. Okay. I'll tell you this, you can find out more about my work, but particularly I made a conversation design page where I've just got some prototypes up. They're half-baked bots is what I call them. One's a conversational AI helper, so to help you figure out how to upskill. Another one is how to figure out what conversational AI use cases work for your industry. And another one's just fun. So I invite you to play with them and then tell me how they could be better. Because that's really where we learn, right? We look at other bots, we look at other experiences, and we say, I think I could do better. I think we could improve on this. So thank you so much.